Hey Ponca City, it's Billy with the Ponca City Chamber. I'm here at Back Alley Brewers and More, located at 218 East Central. Back Alley Brewers and More offers everything that you need to brew your own beer at home. But I've never really brewed my own beer, so I want to talk to Travis. He's the owner. Tell me a little bit about Back Alley Brewers.
So Back Alley Brewers was kind of a passion of mine. I've always wanted to have my own little brewery. And several years ago, my friends next door at Vortex taught me how to brew beer. And so it's been five years ago. And in that process and everything, that I found that there was a need for a lot of the local brewers and winemakers and stuff like that, that I thought, well, we need a little shop. Someplace local, you can get your stuff hands-on, you can get your grains milled, you can ask questions. There's somebody here that can actually answer your questions, show you how to do the process. And so that's what I did. So 2.5 years ago, me and a friend were sitting on the back patio enjoying a nice craft beer, and the idea was born, and then within just a couple of months, the store was open.
Wow.
So from a thought to an actual practice, and now 2.5 years, and still going and looking like we're going to be doing just fine.
Awesome.
Modifying the hours here and there as I find out, what works and what does not. My store is a little less crowded than it was about a year ago. I had tremendous amounts of stuff in here about a year ago, as a lot of people can contest. And I've just found what works and what doesn't. And there's some other things. I've taken care of some people out of state and overseas. There's some local people that are like, well, I really want to buy local, but I'm not local anymore, and so we do that too.
That's cool.
I do have posted hours, Wednesday through Friday, 4 to 7 p.m., and then Saturdays 10 to 6. But my hours are flexible. Being a small business owner, being local, I understand that, and as a brewer, I know sometimes there's immediate needs. During the brew process, you're like, oh no, I broke my thermometer, my hydrometer. We have tools of the trade that we use. And sometimes you're like, I gotta have this. And so my thought going into this whole thing was I would have posted store hours, just kind of for convenience and everything. But if there's an emergency, hey, I need this or whatever, call me, message me. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. The store, it rolls right over to my personal phone. So, and I've had people call me up on a Sunday or a holiday, hey Travis, do you have this? Absolutely, meet me at the shop in 15 minutes, let's go.
Cool.
And so that's, customer service. It's something that's kind of lacking in a lot of places, and so that's something I really, really have a passion for, and I wanted to make sure that that shows. And so far, everyone has really complimented me. I have people travel down from Wichita to purchase from us.
That's cool.
So it's not just a local store. I mean, I bring in people from outside the city. There's people from out towards Guyman that travel over here. There's people like Dollhouse Road Brewery just opened up in Pawhuska. They used to be customers of mine. There's a couple of ladies, Lady Bird Brewing up in Winfield. They're going to be opening their brewery. They're going to be customers of mine so that they can kind of get everything going the way they need to. And the craft beer scene is really kind of a close-knit society. It's people who know people, and there's a lot of networking that goes on. And so, I may be just a craft brewer, but I know this person who knows this person. Well, I have questions and stuff, and so we share and we build upon each other's, failures or learnings, if you will, and we tend to grow and go from there. And the wine industry is very similar to that. I've done a little bit of professional wine stuff on the side, and then I do my own winemaking, sometimes here in the shop, sometimes at the house. The kits are real simple. It's straightforward, 1, 2, 3, 4, just follow the directions and go. Cider making is the same way. I have a lot of people who like to do mead, which is just basically fermented honey, and it's been done for millennia over in Europe, Northern Europe and stuff. People associate with Vikings and all that, but it's not necessarily that. It's just fermented beverages have been with humanity for as long as we know. I mean, we keep finding new things. Oh, hey, we found trace of this in this little pottery jar, and da-da-da-da-da, it goes on and on. So this is something that we've always had in our life. And I just brought that here to Ponca, my hometown, and I wanted to make sure that we had some place for people to come. We share ideas. We actually get together on brew days. we'll have like a big group. Like at my house yesterday, I had a group of probably like 8 people. I brewed a beer. We had everyone brought over bottles of beer. Said, hey, let's try this. Let's try this.
Nice.
So we'll do little samples, and then we'll like maybe cook out or whatever. And it's just a nice casual day of getting together. And I can't do that here in the shop, but we do have casual days in the shop where people come down and we'll kind of sit at the table here, and we may hash out a new recipe. One of our customers, he had an idea for a chips and salsa beer. And yeah, you may say that, but we sat down and we talked about it, and we both did a little research and stuff to see what people had tried and what worked and what didn't. And so we met back here the next week, and we hashed out a plan. We came up with a recipe, which is just like cooking a meatloaf or a chicken noodle soup or something.
Yeah.
You create a recipe, and then you follow the recipe, and it turned out amazing. You take a drink of this beer, and you taste the corn, like a corn chip, and in the salsa you can almost taste the tomatoes, the jalapeno, the cilantro and stuff that's in there. And you just kind of you do it, and then if the recipe worked, great. You try to replicate that, maybe make a little tweak here or there. If it didn't work and you want to try it again, what went wrong? What were the tastes? What am I getting? What are the notes? And
That's cool.
And so I have customers, they'll go and they'll do something. Like I had a person the other day with a mead. He's like, man, I don't know, it smells almost like a little bit vinegary and da 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 da. I said, bring a taster in. I said, bring a bottle, let's sit down, let's talk about it. So we did. So we sat here and we poured it out a little bit, and we tasted and we smelled, and we're like, okay, here's what I'm getting, and past experience and things I've read and people I've talked to, here's what happened. And yes, he had what we call an infection. Mm-hmm. And so the mead just hadn't got enough alcohol in it to prevent the bacteria that forms vinegar from coming on. And so it just got just enough of a vinegar hint in it that it's not something you're going to drink, but you can always turn that around and use it for cooking.
Oh yeah.
So make a vinaigrette. Use it as a marinade for your meats or vegetables or something. Make some sort of a sauce that uses a vinegar and a wine. You can do so many things. We had a beer, me and my guy CJ that works here, and we collaborated with some guys down in Stillwater, Tipsy Sailors, and we made a stout. And we called it, it was a stout, Kessel Run, like Star Wars. Anyway, so we made this beer, and we're like, all right, we're all excited and everything. And then when we tasted it, we're like, what happened? Because it was not what we were expecting. We were expecting like a Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie taste. You wanted a little bit of a cream, the oatmeal cookie, and it was not it. It was so, we missed it so bad. So I was like, well, I have these bratwursts. So I filled up a jug with about half a gallon of the beer, and I thought, well, we'll just do it. So I took it home, boiled my brats in it, and some hot dogs and stuff, and then we threw them on the grill and everything like you do brats, and it turned out amazing. Because you have all these different flavors that are in the stout, it actually imparted some of those flavors and stuff into the meat. So it was like a marinade because you're boiling the brats. And so it actually it kicked up the level of flavor and stuff in the meat that you're eating. And so just because something turned out bad doesn't mean that you can't utilize it for something. There's usually something else you can do. And we've had beers that, you're like, didn't like it, let's do something else with it. If you know people that like to mess with some distillation and stuff like that, you can actually turn that stuff into moonshine. So there's other options that you can do with a lot of this stuff. And same thing with like wine. If you get some off-flavored wine, sometimes you can actually turn that into a brandy, which is just a distilled wine. It's just more concentrated, you get a little bit of the flavor over, so you have that aspect.
And do you sell wine kits here?
I do. I have wine kits that come in a box, and they make 6 gallons of wine. You just need some basic equipment, which is like a bucket fermenter with a lid and stuff, a glass carboy thing, something that's large enough to hold the liquid volume so that you can actually ferment what you're doing. And the whole thing with the fermentation is it's you're taking the natural sugars that occur in whether it's the barley grains and stuff like in beer, or your fruits, your vegetables. I mean, I have a recipe book over there. There's a guy, he's got friends that like onion wine for marinade. That's what it's for. He takes onions, turns it into wine. So you take the sugars and you can add more sugar to it, and then you pitch yeast. And we have wine yeast, there's ale yeast, there's lager yeast. There's so many different types of yeast depending upon the flavors and what you're fermenting. That kind of, they basically help build on each other. So you get what you're looking for as an end product. And these are things that we've cultivated just over the generations, you know, people doing this, and things will change and morph. You know, everything mutates a little bit.
Right.
So you have all these different yeast strains based on where they were cultivated at. And so they develop their own characteristics, and then depending upon if it's fruit or anything like that, same thing. So the wine, you have all these natural occurring sugars. Well, the yeast is actually a living organism.
Right.
So it wants to convert the sugars into alcohol. So that's what it does. It basically gobbles up the sugar and belches out CO2 and then produces alcohol as a byproduct. And then it goes on its merry way, reproducing and continuing to do that until there's no more sugar left, or until you put in some chemical stuff that basically tells it to stop functioning. This is where I want to stop.
Gotcha.
And then you can back sweeten and you can add flavors. I mean, I have stuff over there for like liquors and stuff. And you know, if you want it like a coffee liquor, if you want to like emulate like some sort of a scotch, like a Highland peaty flavor, you can do that. There's just, your limitation is your imagination.
That's awesome.
So, and everything is always about taste, aroma, and you know, and it's just like cooking in that aspect. You're always trying to pair stuff that goes well together. You know, it's like one of those things I learned early on. You don't, you know, try to do a cream sauce and then throw like vinegar in there or some kind of a citric acid because it causes it to coagulate. And then, yeah, it's ruined. You're not going to get anything good out of that other than chunky, you know. But
do you sell stuff to make cheese?
I do have some limited stuff for cheese. When I first opened, I had a bunch of things. I had to rent it. I had a bunch of different kits for a bunch of different items. I had, you know, organic. But there was not a huge cause for that. Cheese is a very prolonged process unless you're doing what they call farmhouse style cheeses. So like your mozzarellas, your Panera, your queso blanco and things like that. Those are very short and easy, and you're eating the cheese that day type of a process.
Oh, yeah.
But your cheddars, your Swiss, and things like that, you have to age. Well, there's also, along with the aging process, there's the pressing process, and so for so many hours or days, you have to have weight on there to help compress and push the moisture out of the cheese. You have a brining process that you have to, you know, brush brine water over the outside, and that way it develops that hard case on the outside, and while it ages and the flavors and stuff meld inside. So there's a lot of things that go on, and most people are like, well, I could do that, and then they look, oh, well, I have to have temperature control. So now you're looking at, okay, I can be between 60 and 65 degrees for this particular cheese, but this one needs to be like 55 degrees, or this one has to be in the 70s. And with the way Oklahoma weather is, you know, everything changes, and we have those same frustrations during wine fermentation and beer fermentation too. It's just a little easier because, you know, I'll go set this in the corner, and usually it's fine in the house, and it's usually not a big deal. Most people will brew during the times of year where the temperatures are more, you know, temperate, like right now. You know, it's a little cooler at night and kind of a nice mild time during the day. Springtime, same way. Those are huge brew times for most people. And so if you go back historically, when there was not air conditioning and climate control, that is why you had certain beers brewed at certain times. And so during the winter time, you know, you're wanting the stout, heavy, dark beers and stuff like that. Well, those were brewed earlier, like in the spring and stuff, and they age well. And so they would brew those in the spring and let them sit all summer long and everything. But like your Oktoberfest, your lagers and your pilsners and stuff, they need a colder temperature, so they tend to brew them, you know, late summer. And it's a fat, we call it it's like with white wine. You make it and you want to drink it while it's young.
Right.
So those types of beers you typically want to drink while they're young.
I got
It's
you.
just, there's complex flavors and stuff, and if you're off a little bit, they really show through because there's not a lot of stuff there to hide. Like in a stout, you have so many layers of flavor. So that's what I do is like what we're talking about here, and people come in, hey, how do I brew? Let me show you.
That's awesome.
But let me warn you, if you're going to be a brewer or a winemaker, 80% of your time is going to be cleaning and sanitation. I mean, that's just how it is, because you'll clean before, you'll clean during the process, and you clean after the process. And that's the same with any of it. And that's the biggest thing is cleanliness. And that's what got our forefathers and stuff before, is they didn't understand sanitation, infections, and so they would get these really off-flavored beers, things would go sour, things would just be hideous, have wild growth. And that's what we control now. We have sanitizers, we have ways of controlling all that. And so now I won't say it's impossible. I've made some very untasty beers, but it's really difficult. As long as you are mindful of the cleaning process and the sanitation, you're almost always going to produce something that is, if it's not drinkable, then it's going to be usable in a cooking fashion or something else, or it's the first step to another process.
That's cool. And
so there's always something that you can do. So you shouldn't limit yourself and think, oh, well, I don't like this, or I didn't like that, and it was, throw your hands in the air and run away. Come down, talk to me, talk to the guys next door.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, is we have the discussions. Hey, is this something you really enjoy? Well, let's see what happened. Let's fix it and then move forward and have success.
That's awesome.
So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I appreciate you letting me come down and check out your shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that you sold the wine, wine brewing and stuff like that. So that's really pretty cool.
Wine kits, if you want to make ciders, we can talk about that.
Awesome.
But most of my stuff is geared towards the beer and a little bit towards wine. Small part towards meat, because I do have a few of those customers, and then there's some people that like to play with some other stuff, and so I do have things of that nature to help support that. So if it's a fermentation with your liquids and stuff, then there's a good chance that I'm going to have something to help support that. Kombucha, I don't really know too much about. I've had a little bit, and it's okay for me. It just doesn't match my palate.
Gotcha.
And it's like sometimes I have people come in. Husband loves beer. Wife, I hate beer. Well, honestly, there's a beer out there for every individual. If you're looking for gluten-free, you get sorghum, millet.
Yeah.
That's basically the same thing. I mean, there's ways out there, there's flavors out there, and really beer is just a fermented grain.
Right.
Your ciders is fermented like apples or pears. Your wines and meads, obviously berries, grape based or honey based. So it's just so many different things out there, and it's just whatever you like. And if you don't like it, that's fine. I'm here to help and support.
Right.
So.
Come see Travis, 218 East Central, Back Alley Brewers and More. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was a great day. Bye, Ponca City.